phone, swamp phone, DJ. Continuing on, this information is coming to me, recent information. I haven't read about this before in the past. I haven't heard about it. And it's pretty much brief and succinct, but to pick up where I left off, last uploads, right? I put a title on it. When you upload to YouTube, they give you an opportunity to put a title in a brief description. And it was active Moors, more active. Active Moors, more active. Why would I say that? Because many of us are Moors, even in the civil leader more two status. That status, that Latin term, it simply means that you are dead in the eyes of the law because no living soul who claims to be you, identify as you, has properly addressed certain venues, like certain courtrooms where court officials are supposed to be, but usually you find courtroom players like magistrates, attorneys at law, esquire, versus an attorney or a judge, right? This government of the people, for the people, by the people. Now, I told you some of the best scholars I've had to study from. This is basically oral tradition for me. Some of it I have gone and read up on, like Roman Curia, the venal policy, dum diversis, intercatera divino policy, those type of things. I have gone out and read certain things, the motu proprio, Pope Francis, to all the heads of corporate ward nation states around the world. But the majority of what you may have heard me say, I took dictation from Grand Sheikh Taj Tariq Bey, Queen Renita Valara Hara Bey, Hakeem Bey, Sabir Bey, Father Hannibal Bey, people like this. Talib Mosi Bey, Abdullah Talib Mosi Bey, people like this. Asir Ducatiers was one of the first ones who went deeper than the 1787 Treaty of Peace and Friendship from my experience. Just we talking about my studies, my lifetime of study now, not in actual chronological history. Asir Ducatiers is pretty young, he's close to my age. But in Asir Ducatiers, he says when he started to catch on to this whole thing about being a Moor, identity, jurisdiction, and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, he cited like 7 or 8 in order that the Treaty of Peace and Friendship came out of, or was born out of. You have all law, supreme law of the land, Constitution, but he went into the Eagle Bowl Treaty and beyond. And I lost all my stuff. I told you the attacks are real. A lot of stuff I had in my notes. I had books worth of notes, like stacks and stacks of college rule notebook paper filled with handwritten notes that I took from the dictation of people like Grand Sheikh Taj Tariq Bey, Asir Ducatiers. I even met some through a cat named Seven, who's deeply into Kabbalah. I met Mr. Bey. I first met Mr. Bey, Alfred Thompson, of Mars number 87, Fort Lauderdale. I met Mr. Bey at the Stadium Hotel. They rented out its executive suite. And I told him when I finally got a chance to talk to him and chop it up with him, I said, man, when I came off that elevator, before I bent that corner into the room where you were giving the seminar, I knew that was a nation Muslim speaking. And to my surprise, he was surprised, and he couldn't understand how I knew that. I said, well, brother, it's from the rhythm, the cadence, the diction, the choice of words, the tone of voice, the emotion. I said, you sound like you're teaching from the rostrum. I'm just waiting to hear the lessons, the actual facts, and all this kind of stuff, but you teaching from the Adab chamber. I don't know too many times I was more happy in my life than when I was bending that corner and hearing Mr. Bay teach the seminar. You had, I want to say her name slipped my mind. Apostle D. Lyles, was it? I think that was like his right-hand person. That's a female. Might be Apostle D. Lyles. I used to know the name and her church. But he had a right-hand, second in command like person. And I think it was Apostle D. Lyles. So that's somebody I met in person. I eventually met Divine Minister Khufu in person. And I've said before on Facebook Live, but I don't know if I said it on YouTube, but Khufu, I meant to say it the last two uploads. I didn't get to it because I interjected with some things from my life and Black Panther Party, some examples about that and all that. That took a little while longer and it got kind of lengthy. I'm already approaching, just past 5 minutes? I'm just past 5 minutes already. I try to keep them about 20 minutes long. So Divine Minister Khufu was on his way to help me with some problems I was having in 11th Judicial Circuit Court in and for the state of Florida. And things that he could do long distance, they were blocking them. I have 3 wrongful convictions stemming from 3 false police arrest reports, 3 false affidavits, right? And I'm telling him that I understand how when you properly ex-rail and you properly identify yourself and address the courtroom players and the Inquisitionist Agents of Rome and all this type of stuff, when you finally proclaim and declare your status, that is supposed to be enough. But in the real world, it doesn't quite work like that. In the real world, I'm a G. In the real world, if they run my license tag or something like that, or run my license, state driver's license, and all that information comes back, we really can't fault the officer or any judge whose court or magistrate whose courtroom we end up in bondage, being kidnapped by the Inquisitionist Agents of Rome, because in all actuality, they do have a job. And if they see this on the record, right away, that person's whole physiology is going to change. This person is trying to make it home to his family. You got to understand this. They got some nasty, ugly charges on my record. The first one, it used to be armed robbery. Upon conviction, and since the jury decided to go along with Officer William Behind, Metro-Dade Police Officer William Behind, agent, Inquisition agent William Behind, because I didn't vote him in the office. I can't call him an officer. But they decided to go with his story, even though the victim and the witness told them during trial that man was 6 feet, roughly 250 pounds, right? And also that they did not see that man in the courtroom, the one courtroom that I was sitting there in the box where the defense is and the defense lawyer. So they know that's me, the defendant. But they told them that they did not see their assailant in the courtroom. But the jury still found me guilty. So now what they could not do, according to what was said in the courtroom at the time by the magistrate, was they could not label it, and the attorney Nasheed Sabir, my attorney, my private attorney, said that they could not say that it was armed robbery. They reduced the charge to simple robbery. Why, I still don't know, but that's what they did. But now, Put yourself in the boots of a state trooper, Florida state trooper, Georgia state trooper, right? U.S. Marshal, whatever, FBI, whatever. Some of the first responders, either plainclothes detective or a uniform police agent. You have someone who you may have not even handcuffed because they were so gracious as to cooperate and allow you to take that state driver's license and go run the information in the computer, and this pops up, and in the computer you see some type of robbery. I don't know in the police database what they did in the courtroom affected the police database, because it started out as armed robbery because Metro-Dade police officer William Behind lied with his line behind and said armed robbery. So now armed robbery may pop up, or maybe it may say simple robbery, but robbery is what it is. Now automatically that put me in a position of like a HBO, which we call in Florida state HVO type of vibe. When you see he has priors, because it's more than one, and it's more than the 3 arrests that led to convictions, you got other arrests. So I have many prior arrests in Dade County, Florida. So you see this robbery, right? Say I'm not even handcuffed yet. You see this robbery. You also see City of Miami Police Agent Gonzalez filed a false affidavit, and on that affidavit, it turned out to be battery on a Leo. I need not read further, but there's also a assault with a weapon, unlawful exhibition of weapon. Okay, now that's enough right there for an agent. You gotta think about what time of day is it, what time of night is it, where are we? Right there, you put that officer in flight mode. I have a person here that got my attention to the point I went to speak to him, approach him, detain him momentarily. I'm even running his information. And now this comes back. Now there may not be any active warrants, but the reason why this particular agent stopped me anyway may make this agent say, look, I don't want this person to walk away right now. This person may have just left a scene of a crime and they haven't even gotten a chance to call 911 dispatch. That person could be dead at this person's hands. Anything could have just happened before I got here. This is just the average person who happened to have this job, just trying to do their job. But their job is a hazard to themselves, right? So now all this libel and stuff that was allowed in the courtroom by Magistrate Leslie B. Rothenberg, 1. I spoke about what she did at the Arthur hearing for that first charge with William Behind, Maurice Young, I think his last name is, and Marguerite Shadrin or something like that. And there was another witness. It was two females. One was a victim, one was a witness. Maurice Young was the younger brother, I think, of the victim, I think. Now, what she did, Magistrate Leslie B. Rothenberg, now you have with the battery on the Leo, what that magistrate did, trying to think of his name, David H. Young, who went on to like Court TV. They made him a star. Yeah, they reward you when you do things like Ron Karinga, who by the time the son who was born in April of 1969, after the death of Bunchy Carter, by 1987 he enrolled in Long Beach University of California, something like that. I may be bumbling up the, but it's a higher learning in Long Beach, University College in California. The son of Bunchy Carter, Al Prentice Bunchy Carter, who many Black Panthers think the FBI/CIA had murdered at the hands of Ron Karinga and other members of Organization US. They were part of a larger group which was consisted of groups like the Black Panther parties and Organization US and other groups called the Black Student Union. Now I talked about that in the previous post under active Moors, active more. More active. Active Moors, more active or something like that. Active Moors, active more. Now, Bunchy Carter's son enrolled in higher learning, Long Beach, and the man they suspect of being the top dog amongst the black students in the organizations who sided with the FBI/CIA to murder 2 Black Panthers was like a chairman or director or whatever over black studies at that university. And you would think that this brother probably wanted to study that because he knows his father is one of the most celebrated and strongest Black Panthers that we know, whose name got out and got into books and was being spoken of freely, right? And that's something to think about. The way this Roman Curia, Divino policy, the way it has carried out Inter Divino policy, dumb diverses, the way it has carried out from decade to decade, from the years 1492 and beyond, the early 1500s to right now 2000 and a quarter century into the new millennium, and we're now in the age of Aquarius, the age of truth or reality. Now, active Moors more active, or active Moors active more. The reason why I say that is because people like Grand Sheikh Taj, Tariq Bey, and Arcilla Ducatia is the main people I hear say this. It's about all these Moors who just sitting on the information, but the Prophet Noble Jew Ali said we need active Moors. Okay? I used to could think of things that most Honorable Elijah Muhammad had said that line up with that. But it's not coming to mind right now. But active Moors, we have to be visible, not only like by way of fairs or something on your head and stuff like that, but he was talking more of like when you see uploads when, for instance, when Grand Sheikh pops up and there's a brother or sister at a police stop, and Grand Sheikh Taj Tariq Bey pop up, and he was begin to speak, and sometimes he would have to request a superior agent, and they would send a superior out. And if it didn't work with the subordinates, and usually the superior would turn to the other subordinates and speak. They start jumping their car and ride off. Grand Sheikh is the first one I ever heard talk about put them on notice. What Terry Carrollton Bey failed to do when he tried to come to Miami to help me with my situation because he couldn't do it through email and over the phone. And that same time period is when they tried to orchestrate me being shot on Biscayne Boulevard around by 17th Street. It was this Haitian sounding and looking officer. I'm not sure exactly what his nationality is, his lineage is, but he looked and sounded like he speak Haitian Creole. And he looked like some of the gene pool of a lot of Haitians I grew up with. And he faked move and made a move to try to make it seem like I was pulling a gun like out of a shoulder holster, out of a Dickie overall jumpsuit that zips up in the front. When I was trying to retrieve my TWIC card and my Dodge Island Port ID, Port of Miami ID card, because it was hanging around my neck. Instead of trying to dig it for my wallet, where I felt for sure he would pull a stunt like that. And just like I thought, he did it anyway. I didn't reach for the wallet. Matter of fact, I think it was in that bag. It might have been in that bag in the car. I'm not sure. They stole that bag. I never saw that bag again. Now, put them on notice. This is one of the things as an active Moor that we have to learn how to do. I mean, we all are that, but it's just a matter of learning how to speak, because what happened in the prisoner war camps is the vocabulary words that you learn, the first sentences that you learn from a child, phrases, and in any little short paragraph you can say just to get along in life. Most of that is laced with slave language, meaning you're using words that are key words in the constructs, in the contracts that have another meaning in their chattel slavery operation that they have going on. Queen Renita Valara Harpe spoke about using an address, talking about certain things like a street, and we don't even know whether to say boulevard or street or this or that, because some of that stuff is from the Republic and some of that stuff is from the occupation. And of course, the Social Security card you probably heard about, and birth certificate and all that, the birth and document that is really theirs, not yours, because it's an instrument, it's a construct. They use it for a certain purpose. You don't really need it. The information is useful on there, but you don't really need that particular document that's stamped and all that. When we were sending that off, authentication and all that, we don't really need that. When they break it down to you what it's for, who created it, and why they created it, you then begin to understand. But we was taught by our grandparents and parents, and we hold that dear to our heart like a lot of people hold somebody like a white Jesus on the cross with blue eyes. It's hard to tell them the true history of that emblem that you see. Right? Some people will never stop loving Jesus. And so on and so. That's the same thing with the birth certificate, the Social Security card, and all this other stuff. All this stuff was created to keep you docile, to be controlled, to be malleable, to acquiesce and whatnot, to be a chattel, so-called slave, and that's it. But it's done on your estate, you being the heir, the progenitor, the heir, and stand to inherit this landmass, and we're talking about my grill of oxen, the Americas. Collectively, we own that, collectively. So the main thing we have to do is get back to what we use to regulate all this. It most definitely was more fair to everybody than what we have now, capitalism, socialism, what's that other stuff? Communism, democracy, and all this foolishness, Republican and all that. That's nothing compared to what we had. Poverty, misery is engineered. Just to show a shit stank, and show you see grass on the ground, trees flowing in the breeze, rain coming down out the skies, birds and ants and all this kind of stuff. It is not a drought. This is the land of plenty right now today. Poverty is engineered. That's something that the powers that be bullshitting all the time, engineered to control you and force you in so many other ways other than pain and death. What they call that shit? It's a name for that. Excuse my language. Scarcity tactics to get you to join their U.S. military complex and whatnot. Their fraternal order of the police and whatnot, and this and that and the third, right? To go into their schools of medicine instead of going to the books that still exist right today that our forebearers wrote and published, that Carlos Linnaeus and all them had to study. Johann Frederick Lumenbach, whatever how you say his name, when they first came over here, they had to have true and actual things to study. They couldn't afford to deal in falsehood. They give us the falsehood. They had to get the truth from us. They had to get the real from us first in order to survive over here. Right? I'm going into 25 minutes. I'm signing off. Wrapping that up. I wanted to make that point because we're going into something, and it's time right on in with some stuff I already started touching on. I won't go into that right now. I'm about to wrap this up. You heard what I said. They didn't name his son. I was reading Wikipedia. They didn't name Bunchy Carter's son, but he enrolled in that school in Long Beach, California, higher learning, and Ron Karinga was like the officiating or whatever over the black studies. I'm gonna tie this up. I'm gonna sign out. Swamp Funk DJs will rise again. The attacks are real. active Moors, active more. Active Moors, more active.